Mark Orion stifled a yawn as he surveyed the gleaming expanse of Olympus Station's grand reception hall. After 15 years in the diplomatic corps, these interstellar conferences had begun to blur together. The same forced smiles, the same veiled threats, the same delicate dance of power. Only the faces changed, and even those were becoming familiar across the galactic community. Today's gathering was particularly tense. The recent discovery of Xylos, a moon rich with rare minerals and strategic positioning, had set the major powers on edge. The Earth Alliance, which Mark represented as senior diplomatic envoy, desperately needed those resources. But so did the Draconian Empire, their reptilian frames towering over most humanoid species as they stalked around the reception with predatory grace. Another day, another potential interstellar incident, murmured Eliza, Mark's chief aide, materializing at his side with a glass of something that glowed faintly blue. Try this. Aldebaran liqueur. Might make the Draconian ambassador's speech more bearable. Mark accepted the drink with a slight smile. That bad. Worse. I've read the advance copy. 20 minutes of thinly veiled threats wrapped in flowery language about mutual prosperity. She nodded toward the Draconian delegation, where Ambassador Krell was holding court, his scaled crest flaring occasionally for emphasis. Mark took a sip and nearly choked. The liqueur burned like liquid fire and tasted vaguely of ozone. Diplomatic weapon, he gasped. Eliza smirked. Consider delicacy, just like everything else that might kill you. As Mark recovered, his attention was drawn to a flutter of activity near the entrance. The Cygnian delegation had arrived, their silver-blue garments flowing like water as they moved through the crowd with ethereal grace. Despite their small stature, most stood barely 3 feet tall. They commanded respect. Their technological prowess was legendary, their star fleet unmatched in speed and stealth. Leading them was Ambassador Lyra, her silver hair elaborately braided with glowing filaments that pulsed gently with her movements. Mark had encountered her only in briefings and policy papers, but her reputation preceded her, brilliant, shrewd, and uncompromising in negotiations. She was said to have single-handedly outmaneuvered the Draconian Empire during the Sirius Crisis, securing mining rights that had kept Earth's fusion reactors running for the past decade. Protocol demanded he greet her, but before Mark could make his way across the hall, a chime rang out, signaling the beginning of the formal presentations. Delegates, honored representatives, boomed the voice of the station director. Welcome to Olympus Station, neutral ground for our shared future among the stars. Mark took his position with the Earth Alliance delegation as the formal introductions began. The Draconians went first, Ambassador Krell's voice rumbling through the hall like distant thunder as he spoke of preserved interests and security considerations, diplomatic code for threats. When the Cygnian delegation was announced, Ambassador Lyra stepped forward, her movements precise and graceful. Despite her small stature, something about her presence made the room focus entirely on her. Her eyes, slightly larger than human proportion and an uncommon violet shade, surveyed the gathering with intelligence and what Mark thought might be amusement. The Cygnian Union extends greetings to all gathered. She began, her voice melodious but carrying unexpected authority. We come in the spirit of. Whatever spirit they came in was destined to remain unspecified. As she spoke, Lyra's gaze locked with Mark's across the chamber. Without breaking her sentence, she gracefully stepped sideways, reached a nearby shipping crate, ironically marked fragile, diplomatic materials, and in one fluid motion ascended it. Now elevated to roughly Mark's height, she continued speaking as if this were entirely normal, though a ripple of murmurs spread through the assembly. Mark froze, wondering if he should look away or acknowledge this unusual attention. He never got the chance to decide. Mid-sentence, Ambassador Lyra strode forward on her makeshift platform, leaned toward Mark, and pressed her lips firmly against his cheek. Time seemed to stop. The kiss lasted perhaps 2 seconds, but it was enough to send the entire hall into shocked silence, followed by explosive reaction. The Draconian delegation hissed in what might have been disapproval or amusement. The Earth Alliance team looked horrified. Someone dropped a glass. Lyra stepped back, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth, and calmly continued her address as if nothing unusual had occurred. Mark stood frozen, mind racing, diplomatic training failing him completely. It was the reaction of the Cygnian delegation that finally clarified the situation. Her aides looked panicked. One was frantically consulting a datapad, while another appeared to be on the verge of fainting. What the hell was that? Eliza whispered, materializing at his side again. Before Mark could answer, a small Cygnian aide rushed forward, bowing repeatedly to both Mark and the assembled dignitaries. Most sincere apologies for the confusion, the aide stammered, voice pitched high with stress. A cultural, that is to say, Ambassador Lyra has. That is, according to ancient Cygnian tradition, a public kiss of this nature constitutes. The aide's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. A binding proposal of marriage. The hall erupted again. Mark's superior, diplomatic director Hammond, pushed through the crowd toward him, face flushed with a combination of rage and panic. Fix this, Hammond hissed. Now, before the Draconians use it against us. Too late. Ambassador Krell had already stepped forward, his reptilian features arranged in what passed for amusement. How touching, he rumbled, voice dripping with mockery. The Earth Alliance and Cygnian Union form a more intimate alliance. One wonders if this was arranged before our arrival. Mark found his voice at last. A simple cultural misunderstanding, I'm sure, he managed, fighting to keep his tone even. Is it? Lyra finally spoke directly to him, her violet eyes unreadable. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Ambassador Orion. Without waiting for a response, she stepped down from her crate and glided toward a side exit, clearly expecting him to follow. Director Hammond nodded tersely. Go. Damage control. Priority 1. As Mark followed the small figure of Ambassador Lyra, he was acutely aware of the eyes tracking them, calculating eyes, weighing how this bizarre turn of events might be exploited. The fate of the Xylos negotiations might have just become significantly more complicated. Lyra led him to a small conference room off the main corridor. As the doors sealed behind them, the composed ambassador visibly relaxed, her shoulders dropping slightly. That, Mark said carefully, was unexpected. Lyra turned to face him, and to his surprise, a mischievous smile played across her features. I do apologize for the lack of warning, Ambassador Orion. Mark, he corrected automatically. I think we're beyond titles at this point. This earned him a genuine laugh, musical and light. Indeed. Then you must call me Lyra. She gestured to a chair sized for humans. Please sit. We have much to discuss. As Mark took a seat, bringing him closer to her eye level, he studied her more carefully. Up close, her alien features were both exotic and strangely beautiful. The slight luminescence of her skin, the unusual depth of her eyes. I assume there's a reason you just proposed to me in front of the entire diplomatic community, he asked, going straight to the point. Lyra nodded, her expression becoming more serious. Several reasons, actually. But first, let me clarify something. The tradition my aide referenced is real, but somewhat obscure. Ancient history, really, not something typically invoked in modern Cygnian society. Mark frowned. So this was deliberate. Very. She sat across from him, her feet barely touching the floor. Tell me, what do you know of the draconian position on Xylos? The abrupt change of subject caught him off guard. They want exclusive mining rights. They claim historical precedent based on their colony on the neighboring moon 3 centuries ago. And do you believe that's their only interest? Mark hesitated. Our intelligence suggests they're particularly interested in the stellarite deposits. Military applications, most likely. Lyra nodded. Your intelligence is good, but incomplete. We have information suggesting a faction within the draconian military is planning something more direct than negotiations. Mark leaned forward. You're suggesting they might take Xylos by force. I'm suggesting they already have plans in motion. Plans that could be severely complicated by an unexpected alliance between Earth and Cygnus. Her eyes met his directly. an alliance symbolized by our engagement. Understanding dawned. You created a diplomatic incident deliberately, to force our delegations closer together, to create an opportunity, she corrected, one that benefits us both. Your position needs strengthening after the recent change in Earth's administration. My people need allies with physical presence and military capability to complement our technological advantages. And you couldn't simply propose this alliance through normal channels? Lyra's expression grew shrewd. Would your superiors have agreed to such close cooperation without a crisis to respond to? Well, mine. Mark sat back, reluctantly impressed by the audacity of her gambit. So what exactly are you proposing? That we maintain the appearance of this engagement throughout the conference. It gives us legitimate reason to coordinate closely, share information, present unified positions, and afterward, we simply announce it was all a misunderstanding. Something flickered in Lyra's expression. That would be the logical conclusion, yes. Mark ran a hand through his hair, considering the angles. My superiors will have questions, as will mine, but they'll play along if they believe it serves our interests. She leaned forward slightly. The Draconians already think this was pre-planned. Let's use their suspicion against them. Before Mark could respond, his communication device chimed. It was Director Hammond, demanding an immediate update. I need to brief my team, he said, rising. Lyra nodded. Of course. We'll need to coordinate our stories. She extended her small hand. Partners, then? At least temporarily? Mark looked at her offered hand, then back to her face. Behind the political calculation, he sensed something else, a genuine intensity, perhaps even vulnerability. He took her hand, surprisingly warm in his. Partners, he agreed, wondering what exactly he was getting himself into. The next days brought a strange new reality. Mark and Lyra appeared together at all official functions, their engagement the subject of constant speculation and political recalculation. The Draconian delegation watched them with suspicious eyes, while other species seemed variously amused, confused, or intrigued by the unusual alliance. Publicly, both the Earth Alliance and Cygnian Union had expressed surprise, but optimism, about the personal connection between their representatives, cleverly avoiding either confirmation or denial of the engagement's legitimacy. Privately, Mark's superiors had berated him soundly before reluctantly acknowledging the strategic advantage the situation created. Just don't actually marry the alien, Director Hammond had growled. The paperwork would be a nightmare. Between formal negotiations, Mark and Lyra met frequently, ostensibly as love-struck diplomats, but actually exchanging intelligence and coordinating strategy. Despite himself, Mark found these meetings increasingly engaging. Lyra's mind worked differently than any human he'd encountered, making intuitive leaps, seeing patterns where he saw only chaos. You're actually enjoying this, he accused during one such session, after she had dismantled a particularly clever draconian proposal with surgical precision. Lyra looked up from her datapad, a faint smile playing at her lips. Aren't you? It's a fascinating exercise in multi-layered negotiation. That's not what I meant. Her smile widened. I know. She set down the pad. Tell me, Mark, in your 15 years of diplomatic service, how many genuine connections have you formed? Not alliances, not strategic relationships. Connections. The question caught him off guard. That's not really the point of diplomacy, isn't it? At its core, diplomacy is about understanding the other, finding common ground despite differences. She studied him with those unervingly perceptive eyes. You've built a successful career keeping everyone at arm's length, including yourself. Mark felt uncomfortably exposed. We're not here to psychoanalyze each other. Perhaps we should be. It might make us more effective partners. She rose, moving to a viewport that showed the distant gleam of Xylos. My people have a saying, the stars watch unchanged while the planets transform. It means. She never finished the explanation. The lights flickered suddenly, and a low-level alarm began to sound. Mark was immediately alert. That's the communications disruption warning. Lyra frowned, pulling out a small device from her robes. Our secure channel is being jammed. Her fingers danced across the surface. It's targeted specifically at Cygnian frequencies. The alarm stopped as suddenly as it had begun. A station-wide announcement followed. Attention, all personnel. A minor power fluctuation has been addressed. Systems returning to normal operation. Mark and Lyra exchanged a look of shared suspicion. Coincidence, he asked. I stopped believing in those long ago, she replied, still working on her device. This is the third minor incident affecting Cygnian systems since the conference began. You think someone's targeting your delegation? I know they are. The question is why. She looked up at him. Have you experienced any unusual occurrences? Mark hesitated, then decided on full disclosure. My shuttle had a navigation malfunction yesterday. Nearly collided with a supply drone. Maintenance called it a software glitch. Lyra's expression turned grave. We need to be more careful, and perhaps do some investigation of our own. Over the next days, as formal negotiations over Xylos continued in the conference rooms, Mark and Lyra began a parallel investigation. They documented the accidents, more communication disruptions, a contamination alert in the Cygnian quarters that forced a full evacuation, rumors circulating about both Earth and Cygnian delegates that seemed designed to create mistrust. They were in Mark's quarters, reviewing security footage they'd managed to obtain, when his door chime sounded unexpectedly. Mark tensed. It was well past station midnight, and no meetings were scheduled. Expecting company? Lyra asked softly, already moving to a less visible position. Mark shook his head, retrieving a small stunner from his desk. Not standard diplomatic equipment, but he hadn't survived 15 years in the field by being unprepared. The door chimed again, more insistently. Ambassador Orion, came a voice through the communication panel. Security detail. There's been an incident regarding your shuttle. Please verify and respond. Mark glanced at Lyra, who shook her head slightly. Something wasn't right. One moment, he called, then whispered to Lyra, the maintenance access? She nodded, already moving toward the panel on the wall that led to the station's service corridors, a feature she had somehow known about despite it not appearing on standard quarter schematics. As she disappeared into the passage, Mark approached the door, stunner concealed behind his back. Verification code? He demanded. There was a pause. Sir, this is an emergency situation. Your shuttle has been compromised. Please open the door immediately. No verification code. Mark stepped to the side of the door. I'm sending the alert to Central Security now. The pretense evaporated instantly. A hissing sound came from the door seals, some kind of gas being forced through. Mark backed away, holding his breath, and slapped the environmental alert on his wall panel. Emergency ventilation kicked in immediately, sucking the infiltrating gas away. But the damage to the door's security system was done. It slid open, revealing two figures in station security uniforms, masks covering their faces. Mark didn't hesitate. He fired the stunner at the first figure, who dropped immediately, then dove behind his desk as the second attacker fired a more lethal weapon, scorching the wall where he'd been standing. The second attacker advanced into the room, weapon tracking methodically. Mark measured his options. Limited cover, one shot left in the stunner, uncertain if he could reach the door before being hit. He never had to find out. A small silver blur dropped from a ceiling maintenance panel directly onto the attacker's shoulders. Lyra, using her slight weight with devastating precision, drove some kind of thin blade into the junction between the attacker's helmet and body armor. The attacker staggered, firing wildly, before collapsing. Lyra rolled clear with gymnastic grace, then rose to her feet, looking remarkably composed despite having just demonstrated lethal combat skills. "We should go," she said calmly, retrieving her blade and wiping it on the attacker's uniform. "More will come when these two don't report success." Mark emerged from cover, looking at her with new eyes. "You're full of surprises, Ambassador." A tight smile. "Diplomatic training on Cygnus is comprehensive." She moved to the fallen attackers, quickly searching them. No identification. Professional equipment. She removed a small device from one's belt. Remote disruptor. Likely what they used on your door. Mark's diplomatic comm unit chimed with an incoming priority message. He checked it, frowning. Emergency meeting of all delegation heads. Apparently, there's been an explosion near the Signian quarters. A distraction, Lyra concluded immediately. To explain why we might be found dead. Mark's mind raced. We need to secure these two before they wake up, then get to that meeting without being seen. I have a better idea, Lyra said, studying the fallen attackers thoughtfully. How do you feel about going undercover? 20 minutes later, Mark moved through the station corridors in a borrowed security uniform, helmet obscuring his features. Besides him walked a prisoner, Lyra, hands seemingly bound before her, head bowed submissively. They passed several real security teams, rushing toward various emergencies around the station. The chaos was spreading, alarms sounding in multiple sections. Someone had escalated their plan significantly. Central security hub ahead, Mark murmured, checking the station's schematic they'd memorized. Heavy protection, but they'll have access to all station systems. And hopefully answers, Lyra added softly. They approached the security checkpoint with practiced confidence. Mark presented the identification they'd taken from the attackers. Prisoner transfer from diplomatic section, he stated flatly. Ambassador Lyra, Signian delegation, attempted to access restricted areas during the emergency. The security officer frowned. We have no alert about this. Communications are compromised, Mark replied. Direct order from Commander Thorne. At the name, the officer's demeanor changed. Understood. Proceed to holding cell. 3. As they moved past the checkpoint into the security hub, Mark felt Lyra tense beside him. Something had caught her attention. Once out of earshot, she whispered, Thorne, that name means something to these people. Admiral Victor Thorne, Mark replied quietly. Earth Alliance Fleet Command, not stationed on Olympus. Yet his name gets us through security. They reached the designated holding cell, entering it together. Once the door closed, Lyra immediately freed herself from the loose restraints. We need access to a terminal, she said, moving to examine the cell's features. Mark watched her work with growing admiration. You've done this before. A cryptic smile. Let's say diplomatic incidents occasionally require creative problem solving. Within minutes, she had bypassed the cell's monitoring system and gained access to its terminal. Her fingers moved with blurring speed across the interface. Interesting, she murmured. There's a shadow command structure operating within station security. Orders coming from a source coded as Phoenix. Phoenix. Mark leaned closer. That's Thorne's old military call sign. But why would an Earth admiral be running covert operations on a neutral station during peace negotiations? Lyra continued probing deeper into the system. Financial trails. Shell corporations. Interesting. Phoenix has been channeling funds to a mining consortium called Helios Extraction Group. Mark frowned. Never heard of them. You wouldn't have. They don't officially exist. She pulled up more data. But they've been positioning equipment near Xylos for months. Mining equipment and military-grade weaponry. The pieces clicked together in Mark's mind. A private operation. Thorne plans to take Xylos by force, outside official channels. The negotiations are just a distraction. And our unexpected engagement threatened that plan, Lyra added. By suggesting Earth and Cygnus might form a genuine alliance, we became a liability. A noise outside the cell alerted them. Someone was coming. Lyra quickly cleared the terminal and resumed her prisoner pose. Mark stood at attention as the door slid open. A tall, severe-looking human woman in an Earth Alliance uniform entered. Commander Ellis, station security chief, and apparently one of Thorne's people. Report, she ordered crisply. Mark kept his voice neutral. Prisoner secure, Commander. Awaiting further instructions. Ellis studied Lyra with cold contempt. Admiral Thorne wants her eliminated quietly. Make it look like an escape attempt. She handed Mark an untraceable injector. This will leave no trace. Use it once you're clear of the security cameras in Sector 7. Mark accepted the injector, mind racing. Understood, Commander. And the Earth Ambassador? Orion? Being handled separately, Ellis replied. The story will be a tragic shuttle malfunction. Very sad. Very final. She checked her timepiece. You have 30 minutes before the next phase begins. Don't waste them. After she left, Mark and Lyra exchanged grim looks. "We need to move," Lyra said urgently. "Whatever this next phase is, I doubt it's in anyone's best interest." Mark nodded, pocketing the injector as evidence. "We need to get to the emergency meeting," warned the delegation heads. "With what proof? Thorne's people control security. It would be our word against theirs." Mark thought quickly. Not if we broadcast the evidence. The station's emergency protocol system was designed to be unhackable, direct transmission to all communication devices simultaneously. And how do we access that? Through the station director's office. I memorized the override codes when I was briefed for this mission. At her raised eyebrow, he added, "Standard procedure. Always know how to send a distress call." They made their way through the increasingly chaotic station corridors. The minor incidents had escalated to what appeared to be a coordinated attack. Fires, security lockdowns, and reports of armed intruders. Perfect cover for a coup. They reached the administrative level to find it eerily empty. Evacuated in the emergency, or cleared deliberately, Mark couldn't tell. The station director's office was sealed, but yielded to Mark's diplomatic override. "Watch the door," he told Lyra as he moved to the main console. "This will take a few minutes." "We may not have minutes," she replied, producing a small device from somewhere in her uniform. "Here, Signian encryption breaker. Should speed things up." Mark accepted it gratefully. "You just happen to be carrying that?" A small, tense smile. "Like you with your stunner and override codes. Always prepared." As Mark worked to access the emergency broadcast system, Lyra kept watch, occasionally updating him on the deteriorating situation outside for what she could gather on her personal device. "Armed confrontations in the diplomatic wing," she reported grimly. "Draconian security forces. Engaged with what they're calling human extremists. Thorne's creating an interspecies incident," Mark realized. Chaos that would justify military intervention. With Helios conveniently positioned to secure Xylos in the aftermath, Lyra moved closer, checking his progress. "How much longer?" "Almost. There." The system finally yielded to their combined efforts. "We're in. Now we need to package the evidence." Together, they compiled the security logs, financial records, and command protocols they discovered. Mark added his diplomatic authentication, while Lyra included Signian verification codes. "That should make it impossible to dismiss as a fake," he said, finalizing the package. "Ready to broadcast?" Lyra asked, finger poised over the transmission button. Mark hesitated. "This goes out to everyone. All delegations, all personnel. Once it's done, there's no going back." "There already is no going back," she replied softly, her violet eyes meeting his. "Not for us." He nodded once, decisively. "Do it." Lyra pressed the control. Throughout Olympus Station, on every communication device and public screen, their evidence began to display. The conspiracy laid bare for all to see. Almost immediately, alarms of a different kind began to sound. The station's primary security protocols, ones that couldn't be overridden by Thorne's people, activated in response to the authenticated threat evidence. "We should go," Mark said, rising from the console. "When Thorne realizes what we've done." The office door slid open, revealing Commander Ellis flanked by 4 armed security officers, their weapons already raised. "Too late," Ellis said coldly. "You've complicated things, Orion. This could have been clean." "Clean," Mark challenged, positioning himself partially in front of Lyra. "You call starting an interstellar war clean?" Ellis's expression didn't change. "Necessary. Earth needs those resources. The Alliance is too weak, too compromised by alien influence." Her gaze flicked to Lyra with undisguised disgust. "Look at you, protecting an alien over your own species' interests." "This isn't about species," Mark replied. "It's about law. Order. The principles that actually make diplomacy possible." "Principles don't fuel starships or feed populations," Ellis countered. "Resources do, and Thorne understands what it takes to secure them." She raised her weapon. "Nothing personal, just following orders." "As was I," came a new voice from behind Ellis's group. The security team turned to find themselves facing a draconian security detail, led by none other than Ambassador Krell himself, his imposing reptilian form filling the corridor. "Ambassador," Ellis began, "this is an internal Earth alliance matter. When armed humans attack my delegation," Krell rumbled, "it becomes my matter. When evidence suggests a conspiracy to violate neutral station protocols, it becomes everyone's matter." His vertical pupils contracted to threatening slits. "Lower your weapons." Now. A tense standoff ensued. Mark could see Ellis calculating her options, none of them good. Finally, she gestured to her team. "Stand down." As the Earth security team was disarmed, Krell approached Mark and Lyra, his scaled head inclined in what might have been respect. "An interesting broadcast, ambassadors. Most illuminating. The conspiracy goes beyond these few," Lyra warned. "Admiral Thorne is currently being detained," Krell interrupted, satisfaction evident in his rumbling voice, "along with several others implicated in your evidence. The station director has requested emergency protocols from all delegations." Mark exchanged a surprised look with Lyra. "You're helping us?" Krell made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The Draconian Empire appreciates strength and cunning. We also honor lawful procedure, despite what your propaganda might suggest. This conspiracy dishonors all our delegations." His predatory gaze fixed on Ellis, "and it will be answered for." In the chaotic days that followed, Olympus Station transformed from a diplomatic venue to the center of a multi-species investigation. The Xylos negotiations were suspended indefinitely as delegations grappled with the ramifications of Thorne's conspiracy. Admiral Thorne and his conspirators, including key figures in the Helios extraction group, were placed under combined custody pending formal charges. The web of financial and political connections revealed by Mark and Lyra's broadcast extended far deeper than anyone had initially suspected, implicating officials across multiple governments. Through it all, Mark and Lyra remained at the center of both investigation and speculation. Their engagement, initially a diplomatic pretense, had become emblematic of a new potential for cooperation between their species. "They want us to formalize the alliance," Mark told Lyra during a rare, quiet moment, days after the broadcast. They stood in an observation lounge, watching as ships from various delegations performed joint security patrols around the station. "I know," she replied. "My government has sent 16 messages suggesting the cultural and strategic benefits of our union." Mark smiled wryly. "Only 16? I received 23. Apparently, our marriage would symbolize a new era of human-Signian relations." "Very romantic," Lyra noted dryly, but there was a hint of something else in her voice. Mark turned to face her fully. In the days since their mad dash through the station, their partnership had evolved into something neither had anticipated. Beyond the political considerations, beyond the cultural differences, they had found in each other a rare connection, equals in intellect, courage, and the peculiar loneliness that came with lives dedicated to representing others rather than themselves. "What do you want, Lyra?" he asked quietly. "Not your government, not your delegation. You." She looked up at him, those violet eyes unguarded for perhaps the first time since they'd met. "I want," she began, then paused, collecting herself. "I've spent my life serving Signian interests, following protocols, playing the expected role." Her small hand gestured toward the stars visible through the viewport. "Out there is a galaxy of possibilities that I've only seen through the lens of diplomatic missions and strategic assessments." Mark nodded, understanding perfectly. "Freedom. Yes." She studied him intently. "And you? What does Mark Orion want when he's not being the perfect Earth Alliance representative?" He considered the question seriously. "I joined the diplomatic corps, believing I could make a difference. Somewhere along the way, that got lost in the politics, the constant compromises." He gazed out at the stars. "I think I'd like to find it again, on my own terms." A comfortable silence fell between them. Then Lyra spoke, her voice soft but certain. "We could leave, together." The suggestion should have seemed absurd. Abandoning their positions, their responsibilities, their entire lives. Yet as soon as she said it, Mark felt something click into place, a possibility he hadn't allowed himself to consider until that moment. Just walk away, she smiled, that mischievous expression he'd first seen in the private conference room after her shocking kiss. We've earned some credit, I think. Saving the station from conspiracy. Preventing potential war. She moved closer to him. Besides, I hear there's a surplus of shipping crates available. Good for standing on. Mark couldn't help laughing. Is that a proposal, Ambassador? I believe I already proposed once, Ambassador. Her expression grew more serious. This time, however, it would be real. Not for politics. Not for strategy. Just for us. In that moment, looking down at this remarkable being who had crashed into his life by standing on a crate and appending everything he thought he knew, Mark made his decision. We'll need a ship, he said. Lyra's face brightened. I may have already acquired one. Small transport vessel, retired from diplomatic service. Needs some work, but functional. You planned this. Let's call it contingency preparation. Her eyes sparkled. It even has a name, the Silver Lining. 2 weeks later, after countless debriefings, ceremonies, and formal farewells, a small transport vessel departed Olympus Station. Its official designation marked it as a special diplomatic courier, its destination vaguely listed as extended mission parameters. In reality, it carried 2 former ambassadors who had tendered their resignations, to the shock of their respective governments, and chosen to forge their own path among the stars. In the pilot's seat, Mark plotted a course away from charted diplomatic routes. Beside him, Lyra monitored the ship's systems, occasionally making adjustments with practiced ease. Any regrets? He asked as the station dwindled behind them. Lyra considered for a moment, then shook her head. Only that I didn't think to stand on a crate sooner. She reached over, her small hand covering his on the control panel. And you? Mark looked at their joined hands, then at the vast starfield spreading before them. Uncharted territory, unsanctioned possibilities. None, he replied truthfully, though I'm still not entirely convinced this wasn't your plan all along. Lyra's musical laugh filled the small bridge. Signian never reveals all her strategies, my love. She leaned over to press a kiss to his cheek, just like that first shocking one, but now filled with genuine affection rather than political calculation. As they accelerated toward open space, Mark reflected that in all his years of diplomatic service, seeking balance and compromise between competing interests, he had finally found the most unlikely and perfect negotiated solution of all. A partnership of equals, a treaty of hearts, a future limited only by the stars themselves. The Silver Lining streaked into darkness, carrying its unconventional crew toward adventure and the most successful diplomatic outcome of all, one where both parties truly won.